There are still women, and these aren't women in their 40s. These are women in their 60s and 70s who
Yeah,
have said to me, "Oh, menopause, that happened a long time ago for me." And I'm
right.
like,
You're
"Well,
like,
if that happened a long time ago, then you shouldn't be here because the only time menopause goes away is when you're 6 feet under." The textbook definition, which is a 12-month time frame where consecutive 12 months you do not have a period, and then on your 366th day you get to wear the tiara of menopause for a day, and then you're postmenopause.
three things you'll learn on this podcast. Why menopause isn't just a health conversation, it's a leadership conversation that high performing women can't afford to ignore. How to navigate the biological, emotional, and identity shifts of midlife without losing yourself in the process. And what it looks like to lead your next chapter with self trust, discernment, and real possibility. What do you get when you combine a bold speaker who refuses to let biology be an afterthought, plus an educator who's rewriting what midlife actually means, and a founder who turned one of the most misunderstood chapters of a woman's life into a leadership conversation? You get Marelda Rodrigues.
Hi, Marelda. I am so happy you are here.
Hi, Tanya. Thank you so much for hosting me. This is lovely.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait for our listeners to hear your story and your wisdom that you've gained throughout the years. And so I'm just going to kick it back to you to share with us, where you started and how you landed where you are now.
I started in a very familiar place to many people, which is the corporate world. And my journey in the beginning, I would say, is very traditional. The high school, the college, the graduation, you get your first job, you move up, to the different ranks, and then you leave the company and you find something bigger and bigger and bigger, and you chase that corporate dream. And that's how my journey began. But somewhere along the way, as I was really successful, I was very successful because if I were to put it down to one thing, I was extremely ambitious. I don't know that I'm that ambitious at this point, but I was hungry and I wanted to be at the top of the corporate ladder. If someone said, "I'm not promoting you," I'd be like, "Well, then you're not worth my time. I'm going to go off somewhere else." And so I ended up at a job that I really liked and was really fulfilled emotionally, mentally. But somehow when I came home, I would feel really hollow. And I couldn't figure out what that was. I'd never experienced it before, and I couldn't describe it to anybody. So it wasn't something that I felt, "Oh, I'm feeling troubled. I need to see a therapist." It wasn't even that. I just remember physically feeling like something was not present with me. And I didn't know what it was. So I don't know where I had the wisdom to go inside myself and say, "All right, me, myself, and I are having a meeting because somehow we have to figure this out." And I remember distinctly this happened in the kitchen, and I just was standing by the sink and I said, "We have to figure this out. What do you want to do? You have to tell me." And the next morning, I got in my car and I drove down to a massage school. And I thought, okay, all right, okay, we'll go in, we'll put in an application. I don't know what this is all about, but okay. However, my soul knew what this was all about. I have loved the human body since I was a child. I used to read books on diseases. I used to look at pictures of the human body. I used to marvel at anyone who worked, doctors and discoverers and what did they find out. And I really loved that. So I pursued massage therapy and found that it filled that void that I was feeling. So I had two careers, massage therapy by evening and weekend, and then daytime I was in human resources in corporate. And I did that for many years. I did that concurrently for 8 years and grew in both areas wonderfully. And then I took on this role in the corporate space that being ambitious became like a carrot flying too close to the sun. And I remember having these conversations where my inner self would say, I don't think that's a good idea. And I'd be like, oh, just be quiet. We're going to go do this thing because this manager said, and if I do what this manager says, I'm going to get this promotion. It's a straight path to that promotion. And so I gave away my rest. I gave away my values. I gave away my self trust and literally put everything, all my eggs in that corporate basket. And it crashed. And I burned out. And I did not even know I was burning out. I just knew that my emotional capacity was dwindling by the day. And it was bad enough that when I went to bed at night, I'd brush my teeth, I'd get into bed, I'd get out of bed, go to the kitchen, eat about 7 or 8 cookies, just eat them. And then I would brush my teeth, get back into bed, and try to go to sleep. And then a few hours later, I would wake up from a very restless, non-energized sleep. And this continued for a couple of days until one day I used to take the train. I lived in Long Island and I used to take the train into Manhattan. And that was an hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half some days. And I remember we had to go over the water. And as soon as the train doors shut, my chest tightened so tight that I thought I was having a heart attack. And my mom had passed away from a heart attack. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, is this what she experienced? And I started to panic and it just kept getting tighter. And then the train started to move over the water. So there's no way I can stop anything. And it dissipated, that feeling dissipated as we went over the water and got to the next station. And by the time we were at the next station, this feeling was gone. But it emotionally and mentally stayed with me till I got to work that day. And I remember walking to work thinking, this has got to stop. I just cannot have my health taken away by my job like it did to my parents. So I left corporate world and moved cities and moved into a completely different industry and worked a lot in massage therapy and teaching in massage education, massage therapy education, until I became a health coach, which I felt was a really good next step for me because I got to do things I used to do in HR, which was coaching and counseling and things like that, and helping people see the bigger picture. Because sometimes that's why you're the HR partner, because a manager might be stuck and you're helping them see some of the bigger pictures or an employee's potential or a career move. So it really helped me thrive in skills I already had.
So when you first started massage school and you had that conversation with yourself in the kitchen, how old were you?
Probably around 29 years old.
So that's early on in a career.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I had a very unusual career because I don't even know some days how I got to where I got because I feel it was sheer, I don't know, Wonder Woman energy, right? I just really feel, I can still feel the energy of that. It wasn't that, I had this big network. Yes, I had a small network and they kind of introduced me to people, but I had a very large energy. Like when I walked in, me and my energy walked in. and we took up space, and we said in no uncertain terms what we were willing to do. So I think that was very unusual for someone who was 25, 26 years old, just out of college. I had my master's degree, which is why I was a little older by the time I was in the workforce. But I remember being fearless and just saying, this is what I want to do. I even went to one of the CEOs and I said, this is what I want to do. You have a position. I'm going on vacation. About a week. Should give you enough time to make a decision. I'll call you when I get back.
I love that. You're a bold woman. You were a bold young
So
woman.
I, and so I was at the top of my game. And so by the time I was 29, I was already like, all right, what else can I do? What else can I conquer?
Yeah. So, what do you think caused all that ambition? Like, where did you get that from? Because you said you don't really have that kind of ambition the way that you used to. So, where do you think that stemmed from?
I think, I grew up in a very, I don't want to say traditional, but I grew up on the other side of the planet, right? My heritage is Indian, and not conservative Indian necessarily, but just, a whole different culture, right? And then I came to the United States. And I think I was just trying to be my own person. So much so that when I was a student, the entire campus probably knew me because I held so many positions in student government, in student associations. I had a job as a cashier in this very large dining room, and I was like the fastest cashier because I loved talking to everyone. And so I was like, okay, let me see if I can ring this up the fastest way before I can get it. And people would change lines to come into my line. And so I think it was just gamifying everything. Now that is still with me. I will gamify things. So I think it's a little bit of that energy. I don't think, we can call it ambition, we can call it grit, we can call it tenacity, whatever it is, but it's that energy that is propelling you. It's like jet fuel, right?
Yes.
I
Yes.
didn't,
I
I didn't
have a
even
lot of
need,
that.
I didn't even need coffee. I remember my boss coming through the line from my other job, and he needed to get coffee, and I was my usual bubbly self, and he was like, okay, Merelda, if you could just hold until I've had my coffee. So it was that energy
Yeah.
that moved me to all these positions. And I think when I know that even to this day, if you're a CEO and someone high energy shows up and says, oh my gosh, why have we not done this and built this wing and had this division? And where's all the dreamers in here? It is going to get that CEO's attention because
Mhm.
that's someone who is taking what's on their plate and saying, oh my gosh, like, let me just take it off your plate and go somewhere with it. So that energy is, I think, was very attractive to people in management.
I think initiative, people who take initiative are just attractive in general as employees,
Yeah.
right? Like as I look for an intern or I look for someone to assist me, I want them to take initiative because otherwise it's just another thing for me to do is to constantly have to come up with the tasks for them. It adds to my plate. So if they're forward thinking and they're one or two steps ahead of me, I'm like, praise Jesus. One less thing I have to deal with is managing them, because they can manage themselves and they can anticipate what's coming next. So I think that's appealing in general.
And I just thought about where that came from because I remember I had to do co ops for my
Mm.
degree. And I was in hotel management. And so I was in a convention hotel, which I mean, at that point, I was like 19 years old. I had worked in food service like maybe 7 months. And then I had to go work in this hotel, knew nothing about anything in the workplace. And I was the hostess in the restaurant. And so Indian culture is very much about follow what your manager says. You're always following the senior, superior, elder, somebody. And so I remember thinking, okay, well, the manager will tell me what she needs. She said, stand here by the hostess stand and then seat the people with the menus, and that's what I can do. And I remember her saying to me one day, it wasn't like feedback or anything like that. I think she was just training me. Now that I look back, I think she was just training me. And she said, you know, you really need to take more initiative. And I was like, what is an initiative? And by the end of that co-op, I was well versed in initiative. And I
Yeah.
think that became the energy.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it becomes the thing that gets you promoted. It becomes the thing that people appreciate, right? And food and beverage will teach you that in a heartbeat. I worked in food and beverage for years, and I still will walk into restaurants and look at the way they are approaching customer service. And I'm thinking, this is nice touch. Like, how do I bring this into my business? Even though our businesses are fundamentally different, but it's like, how can you add those little nice touches that people remember? You know, and so I'm always functioning from that brain of mine that's a small business owner going, how can I apply this to my what I'm doing? Yeah, so I think initiative is a great way to get yourself noticed and promoted. So yeah, you were set on a path at that point for sure. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So what came after that? After the massage school and the coaching people, is that what you're still doing?
Yes, I'm actually doing both. And I think for me now, I have over 2 decades of experience as a massage therapist, and it has been an amazing journey learning how the human body communicates, which just feeds into my 5-year-old enthusiasm, right? So, with the human body.
Nice.
I mean, I can still see my little books that I used to sit with and be like, this is the ear and this is the chest and look at that foot. And, from that age to learning about diseases, being the person who at age 15, I loved genetic science. And so I would sit and work out genetics problems on my own
Wow.
just because I was fascinated. I was like, oh my God, if you cross this chromosome with that chromosome. And
At 15, that's crazy.
so
Wow.
that was, something that to me seemed so normal, like seemed regular, right? That's because of the passion I have of the human body. So now I'll tell you, if you ask me what is the greatest class I had in hotel management, it was my sanitation and safety class because we got into all kinds of what the germs are that live in all the surfaces and what do they do and which diseases they cause. And I ate that up. I loved that class. And so I have always, like I said, it has surfaced every now and then in that corporate space, right? But I think when I had to get out of corporate America, I didn't have a plan because I never knew I was going to get out of corporate America. And that was a panic moment. Aside from the panic attack that happened on the train, the panic moment was, what do I do? Because it was the first time I was so exhausted, because burnout will leave you exhausted. But I also did not know that it was burnout. So I just remember thinking, why is it I can sleep? I'm not even going to say I really slept. I was horizontal with my eyes closed in my bed in my pajamas. Let's call it that, right? And I woke up unenergized. I had no energy. I had bags under my eyes. I had like dark circles. I was twice my size in like I was overweight. Obviously, when you eat 7 to 8 cookies every night, just, out of nowhere, and it's like a self-soothing mechanism. I just knew that, I just couldn't do that anymore. And I wondered what would happen if I then got tired of massage because I was so exhausted, right? But I was massaging at a spa. And I just thought, oh my God, I hope I don't hate massage because I don't know what else I would do. I don't know how I would pay my bills, right? Like, what career would I have? And I'm just so glad that I definitely had guardian angels watching out for me. I definitely did because they carried me through. I had the luxury of flying, taking a few months off and flying back to India where my dad lived and just spending 3 months with him and staring at the walls. I didn't even know like what was happening. Of course, in retrospect, when I started picking up the pieces and realizing that this is what burnout is, and I came back to the US, moved cities, changed careers, then said, you know what, it's just not health coaching, we'll also do massage. And then I wanted to coach people who were like me but didn't know they were burning out, right? I was like, oh my God, let's not go to burnout. It's terrible. Let me help you before that. But I think this culture in this country really promotes the rat race. And so when you're somebody saying stress management, you sound like everybody else talking about stress management. Nothing stands out. So I couldn't differentiate myself. I didn't know how to differentiate myself from everybody else. I'm like, oh my God, please don't burn out, don't burn out, don't burn out. It was kind of like like Chicken Little, right? The sky is falling, sky is
Yeah.
falling. And then I would say in 2018, it was fall of 2018, and I was in the spa massaging, and I had a client. She was probably, I would say, between 70 and 75. I'll put her in that age range. And she came in, and, my brain was like, oh, she's going to tell me she has arthritis and her neck hurts and, her hip hurts, or, she's been walking too much, or, I just, all the assumptions, right? And she said to me, when I said, how can I help you today? And she said, I don't know how you're going to help me. My daughter died 2 weeks ago. And I thought, what? That is not hip pain. Wait, what? And I call that my stop the scroll moment, when I had to stop scrolling in my brain and look at this woman and say, oh. And I'm thinking to myself, God, I don't even know what you do. I don't know what you do. So I said, okay, you know what? No worries. Go ahead and disrobe, get on the table, go face down for me. I'll be back in a moment and it'll be fine. Everything will be fine. And she said, okay. And I stood outside the door and I thought, oh my gosh, universe, I don't know. I need to call a friend or something from somewhere because I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And then I just said, just help me through this session. And then I went into the room, and 60 minutes later, I don't know what happened. I don't know where I was. I don't know what happened. 60 minutes later, I just knew that the time was up, and she held my hand and she said, thank you so much. That was amazing. And I thought, great, because I don't know what happened. And then she came back a few weeks later and she said, can you do that again? And I thought, oh God, I have absolutely no idea what I just did.
The first time.
Because it was not anything I had been taught. I just don't know what happened. So The thing about me is I have the capacity to dissociate and watch myself from the top so I can see what I'm doing. So that's what I did during the massage. I called the universe again. I said, please try to help me again, but this time I'm going to rise above and watch and see what I'm doing so I can pick up the choreography, which was great because 60 minutes later, she was happy. I had picked up the choreography. I had no idea what it meant. I could not translate why I moved my hands this way and not that, or why did we go in this sequence? I couldn't figure that out. So, but I knew I was onto something. I just didn't know what. And then from there, the science based person in me started to research and think about it. And then I practiced on a few people and I said, I just need to practice something on you. Can I just do this thing? I think it's called grief massage, but I don't know how to explain it to you. And they were lovely souls and they were my guinea pigs. And as I was doing the choreography, different questions would come up, which were science based. And so I would go to Google and I would type in all these questions and I'd be like, but I know it's this and I know it's that. And ultimately, it boiled down to having the same touch principles as weighted blankets, which soothe the nervous system. It is not a choreography or a philosophy that is taught in school. I have no idea how I was chosen to be the messenger to do this. I did teach massage therapists for a while how to do grief massage and what goes with it and about the nervous system and why it's so different and why we don't learn this in school, because it really is a very, very advanced concept. It's very advanced. And then I ended up doing grief work in health coaching as well as massage. So it wasn't just bereavement, it was any kind of loss. So it was, whether it was divorce or we had COVID at that time. And, so business losses, loss of freedom, right? We couldn't go very far in some cities, some countries. So after that, I felt that grief work was beautiful. I still love it, but it just once again was, I felt like, when you have a bottle cap and it's a twisty bottle, you twist it on and twist it off. And I just felt like I was missing the grooves. It just wasn't fitting correctly. And I couldn't figure out what that was until 2025, last year, when I myself was not feeling well. And I couldn't figure out what was going on physically. I was starting to feel really weak. And I went to, so of course I made the doctor's appointments and lived my life. And I went to the screening of the M Factor, during which time the doctor in the
Having trouble focusing.
No, we had a siren and I wasn't sure if you
I
could
heard
hear
it.
that.
Yeah, I could. Yeah.
So,
That's why I said, are you having trouble focusing? Yeah. Anyway,
no, I'm not.
so go on.
It was, I was just waiting for the thing. So, as I was watching this movie, the doctor said something about menopause grief. And in that moment, everything landed. Everything got clear. I saw my path. But I never would have been able to do that if I had not done 6 years of grief work. And now it became clear that what was happening in my health were some sort of aftermath of postmenopause, if you will. And it happened so fast between April to June of last year. And then I became a menopause coach. So it was kind of like I wasn't feeling well. I went to the M Factor, I figured my path, and then I became a menopause coach. And that's been a beautiful journey since. I've had to find my footing within menopause because, as you've probably noticed, the entire world in 2026 is talking about, menopause and menopause hormone therapy, MHD, or the GLP-1 drugs, or all of this stuff. And so all of my training is very advanced. So I'm well versed in having good conversations with women around their experience of menopause, perimenopause, postmenopause, menopause hormone therapy, and GLP-1s. So I do have a lot of that conversation. I am also training to be, I should be finishing this pretty soon by the end of the summer, is my pelvic health coach training,
Nice.
because that is an area that women just, I'll raise my hand. I was clueless, right? I mean, it's not like we're going to spend all our time going, what's down there? Let me have an exploration session, which actually should be happening. So it's just become this whole new way of life for me. So it's not a career anymore. It's not a, I am a health coach. It's not a title. It's just a way of life, which is menopause. And within menopause, I teach women how to become self, to become sovereign through self leadership.
Yeah. Sounds like a mission.
It is a
You said
mission.
it's not a job title. I'm thinking it's a mission.
It is a mission. Yes, you're
Yeah.
correct.
And you asked yourself earlier, you said out loud, you don't know why you were chosen, to learn that information. And my initial response was because you asked. You asked. When you stepped out of that room, you're like, help me through this session. Right. And then you went back again and said, show me again and let me witness it. You asked to be taught.
Yeah, I
Right.
guess.
And
I
I think
guess.
you were I think the first time it just channeled through you. You
Yeah.
didn't know, you weren't cognizant, but that you called in something to be channeled through you. So
I,
that's why it was given to you because you asked for it.
but what
Right.
I, but what I meant by that was standing where I was standing to have something so unbelievably different than what people know of massage. So different that massage therapists were like, how did you learn this? And I was like, I don't even know what to tell you because we don't have classes. I'm the one teaching the class.
Right. Right.
I
It
think,
just came to you. Yeah.
yeah. And I
And,
think
and
that's a,
I do think in the past, I've always recognized the power of touch, right? So some people don't need to go to massage therapy because they want you to work out all the knots and the kinks. Some people just want to be touched. They just
mhm,
want it, like, there's nothing that feels better to your body than someone to rub on it,
yeah,
right? And to loosen up your muscle. And you're talking about somebody who lost their daughter, which is the reverse of what you suspect is going to happen. You think you're going to go first. And so losing a child is very difficult. It's every mother's worst fear, honestly.
mm,
And we hold trauma in our body, right? And
yes,
she just wanted somebody to care for her body because she was grieving. Like she was cognizant enough to know what she needed. And what a beautiful gift she led you to, right? Because she was
100%.
aware of what she needed,
Yeah.
and then you took that ball and just ran with it, which is what a great story. What a great gift you were given, both from, source, universe, whatever you want to call it. And that woman who walked in your room at just the right time. And you had trained for it, right? Your
Yes.
whole life has like put you on that journey. I love that you talked about the 5-year-old self came back and was like loving all that stuff. I'm like, yes, those little girls inside of us, they like to participate. They're like, bring us back. We were fun. We were cool. We liked cool
Yeah,
things.
totally.
So I love that you brought her in with you. So I just think, what an incredible journey. Yeah.
I feel very blessed. I'm very, very
Yeah.
blessed.
Yeah. So how do people find you? I'm assuming it's run like a business. Like you must have a website and um, like how do people find you? Like talk about what you do with people, how long you work with them. Is it a like 6-week program? Is it an ongoing thing? Like, talk to me about how that all works for you.
For now, as we sit in June of 2026, my website is under construction because it was so obsolete that it was so painful.
Yeah.
And so it's under construction. So in the meantime, people can connect with me through LinkedIn. It is where I am primarily. So either sending me a message there or connecting with me on LinkedIn on the platform, because some people like to follow me, some people make a connection, some people just send a message. But that's my primary platform at the moment. And the way I work with clients as I'm finding my own, I'm coming into my own, if you will, and what lights me up. I am working with AI and I am creating simple tools for the busy woman so that she can just not have to wonder. I want to take the wonder and the confusion. And when I say wonder, it's not kind of like, wow, I wonder how many stars in the sky. That's amazing. No, that is
It's like,
definitely
I wonder why this is happening to me right now. That's what all of my
exactly.
friends and I sat
Like,
around and
why
talked
is
about.
why am I
What are
having
you
the
going through? What are you going through? How are
yeah,
you dealing with
yeah.
it? How are you dealing with it? What's your doctor telling you? You know, like we all have conversations like that. And there's the younger generation sometimes who are sitting and eavesdropping. They're like, I love that you ladies are sitting here talking about this because they want to know more, right? They want to know what they're in for. So
So
yeah,
I'm
I get the wonder is what the hell
yeah.
is
So
happening?
I'm using that because it's a really fast, what do you call, it's not an opinionated tool. It's not based on opinion. It's literally, I've taught it to look at certain factors
Right.
and help the person that's using the tool. I am also creating a community online. It's called Sovereign Becoming, and that is coming out as well. It is really a place for women to learn about self leadership. This is not the space for women to come in and say, I'm having hot flashes. What do you do for that? Because there's the whole internet and clinicians that have that conversation. The women that come into my space have the conversation with, how do I make this a lifestyle? How do I operate and succeed and meet my potential in spite of menopause? What are the things I need to know about menopause that I can kind of keep my eye on, my finger on the pulse, but I'm not stopping my living? I'm not all consumed with which GLP-1. I'm not all consumed with symptom chasing. So I'm taking women from symptom chasing to self leadership, getting
Yes.
grounded, and becoming who they want to be in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. I've had some amazing women in their, some female clients and connections between the ages of 80 and 90, 89 and 92. And they are feisty and fiery. And I'm just like, wow. So I feel that same energy that I talked about earlier
Yeah.
is capable of carrying me through,
Yes.
but only if I'm not head cluttered with symptoms and obligations and putting myself last and not recovering and pleasing everybody before I even lift a finger for myself.
It's a pandemic, man. That is a full pandemic for women.
It
It's
is.
been
It is.
happening for generations. And I hope we're nipping that in the bud finally because I'm over it. Um,
It's unfortunately also fed into by anyone that's benefiting from it. I'm just going to leave it at that.
right.
Right. And so,
All the men?
no, 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 that's not what I mean. What I mean is, if you're running with any particular titles, if you're running with any particular financial gain, right? So that's one of the biggest reasons why I want to be in a space where I'm talking about how are you meeting your potential? How are you being who you want to be? Or have you
Mm.
just given up and said, oh, I have hot flashes and I'm just going to chase the hot flashes,
Yeah.
right?
I'm
Um,
chasing the sleeping. I'm like,
yeah.
God, my sleeping, it's better than it used to be, but I swear there was 3 years where I didn't sleep.
And you know what?
I was like, oh my God.
This is going back to how I work with clients. There are ways that they can come in, like contact me or whatever, right? But I do take them through a process. I do take them through a journey, and it depends on, not everybody gets the big journey because not everybody can handle the big journey. It's not meant for everyone. So having a conversation with me is not it's I'm not selling you anything. I'm
Right.
asking you, what is your capacity? What is it that you want to tackle first? What is weighing you down right now? Because if we can move that boulder off your back, who
Mhm.
can you be?
Okay.
And this boulder is not meant to stay. It's just a phase. So let's create your foundational pieces so that when the next piece comes in, because menopause changes literally
Yeah.
by the decade. So when you're hit with your 60s, you're not going, oh my God, I got to start from scratch. You're just like, ha, I already have the framework. I just have to put it towards this decade.
Right.
And so I believe that menopause is handled through systems. You require systems thinking. You cannot go with symptom chasing.
Yeah. Love that. Because you're never not in menopause once you hit it, unless you
Correct.
go back to perimenopause. Because some people think, well, that'll die down over time and you won't have menopause anymore. I'm like, no, the definition of menopause is like once that happens, that's it. Like
The life
you will
stage.
be, you're in menopause till you die.
It is. It is. And I think, there are still women, and these aren't women in their 40s. These are women in their 60s and 70s who
Yeah.
have said to me, oh, menopause, that happened a long time ago for me. And I'm
Right.
like, well,
You're like,
if that happened a long time ago, then you shouldn't be here because the only time menopause goes away is when you're 6 feet under.
yeah.
And
I'm
so if
like,
you're
oh, that it happened a long time ago. Are you bleeding again? Like, what are you talking about?
right, so they're just referencing, the textbook definition, which is a 12-month period, a 12-month time frame where consecutive 12 months you do not have a period, and then on your 366th day you get to wear the tiara of menopause for a day, and then you're postmenopause. I mean, you're postmenopause. So the thing is, you're still in menopause, and
And
that's,
the
I think,
symptoms hang on and they change
yes, they do.
like all the time when you're going through that. The initial first 5 or 6 years are just like, there was sometimes I was like, I'd just rather bleed, honestly. And at least I knew what that was. I knew how to deal with that. I'm like, every 6 months, I'm like, oh God, here we go again. What is this?
And I
You
think
know?
also, well, when you start chasing symptoms, it's like playing
Yeah.
whack-a-mole because you're like, let me
Yes.
hit this, and then this one pops up, and let me hit this, and then this one pops up.
And you never
Whereas
hit any of them
you
because
never hit any of
you're
them. When you have a systems thinking, you're,
yeah.
it's kind of like how I talk about it is when I'm working with clients is creating a dashboard. If you got into your car and your speedometer is in front of you, but your gas meter is in the back seat, and then your hot and cold temperature is in the trunk, are you going to chase around to just drive your car? No, that's going to be exhausting, and like it's just not practical. That's not how it works. So you can have a menopause dashboard, a system, and all you do is monitor that system from here to Sunday all day, and it keeps you on track. It keeps
Yeah.
you where you need to be without the feeling of burden.
And
by a
feeling
life.
like you're totally out of control. You're
Yes.
like,
And
I
that
had,
is
I can't do
like,
anything about this. And
yep. And
especially
that,
like me, I can't take HRT. The doctors won't give it to me. So
yeah.
I'm like, oh, great. All my friends who are like, I got on an HRT and I feel great. I'm like, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Glad
And
to hear it.
well, and I think it's also, having a system in place helps
Yeah.
you neutralize anything that feels like, oh, this isn't a solution, but hey, this could be, right? So you immediately have options. When you have options, you're in control. When you don't have options, it's that feeling of helplessness, powerlessness,
Mhm.
that only the doctor can do something. And these days, there's doctors that really don't know because this is the
They
crazy
don't
thing.
know anything. Oh my God.
Well,
Half of them. Yeah.
I mean, there are statistics out there, and there's a good amount of doctors that do not receive a lot of education, and there's a very small piece of doctor or a small percentage of doctors that feel comfortable having a menopause conversation.
Thank
And
God for
I'm,
my OBGYN because I went to a doctor because my knuckles were hurting me. I
yeah.
was like, God, my hands ache. And I asked her, she was just my general practitioner. I was like, and I listed off a couple symptoms I was experiencing. And I was like, I'll tell you what, my hands and my knuckles and my joints just hurt in my hands. And I'm thinking it's menopause. She's like, no, that's not menopause. And
Hmm.
then there was something else. She's like, no, that's not menopause. I went to my OBGYN. She goes, all those things are menopause.
Hmm.
She's like, that is incorrect information, but I can tell you that every woman that steps into my office, their knuckles hurt in their hands. Every
Hmm.
single one of them. And I'm
Hmm.
like, well, thank God somebody has empirical evidence because I've got this other woman telling me that absolutely not, has nothing to do with menopause.
Yeah.
So you go to two different doctors, you get two different answers. But I trust my
Well,
man. Obviously the woman who's seeing women every day is the woman I trust. So,
well, I
but
will tell you, Tanya, you're very, very lucky because I went through 4 doctors before I found my fairy godmother doctor
yeah,
because the 4 did not have any conversation. They saw the symptoms. They each gave me a diagnosis and started treating symptoms in silos, right? Until I got wiser and I learned that, from becoming a menopause coach, obviously that was my curriculum. But then having to find a doctor that I could speak to from my curriculum. And that was the most frustrating part, to get through 4 female doctors who could not have a menopause conversation with me. And I now teach women how to find a what I call menopause forward doctor, because you have to, and I have seen clients literally when they find that doctor, the sigh of relief, the sense of like, oh my God, I can now move forward. They feel like they're back in control because menopause itself is a feeling of loss of control. And
yeah,
then to
it's
find a
crazy
doctor
making.
who cannot have a conversation is, and you're like carrying this thing going, who do I give it to? Who can help me figure this out? Right. And
And
you're,
they're not, and what they're telling you is not true. Like I knew in my bones that my joints hurt because of menopause. And she's
yeah,
like, you'll have to get checked for rheumatoid arthritis. I was like, no, I don't. I don't have rheumatoid arthritis.
yeah.
Like, what are you saying right now?
And that's why, as a menopause, I consider myself a menopause generalist, right?
Yeah.
Um, I work with women in midlife, which is 40 to 60, which means that I invite women who are in their 30s to start their education early, Because listen, when we were younger, like ages 9, 10, whatever, someone called us aside, told us about a period, whether we remembered it or not, when the first period came, we knew, some of us, like myself, I thought I was going to die, but then I was reminded that I I had had a period conversation. And I was like, oh, right.
I never had that. I never had
Okay.
that.
Yeah. So, but what I'm saying is, in this day and age, that's a common conversation. And that needs to be the same conversation we have around menopause with women that are
Yeah.
younger. The hindrance, if you will, I'll just call it hindrance. It's not technically a hindrance, but the thing that gets in the way, right? Is the fact that in their 30s, women are still having babies. So they're not thinking of menopause, right? So that's the thing that I feel women in their 30s, while you're having a baby, go ahead, have your baby. I know it's a lot of work. Like it is a lot of work because you've got, maybe you're a mom of multiples. Maybe you're a mom that's not got a lot of support. So you're doing the best you can with this child that is changing every single day, right? And their needs are changing. Their reliance on you is changing. Your support system may be changing. But then someone comes along and says, I'm just going to say you also have to insert menopause education at this time frame.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm about to have my second baby, right? So
Right.
there's this is why women are a little disjointed, from
Yeah.
the progression of a full life cycle. So if we just said, listen, pregnancy leads to motherhood, yes, that's lovely. But if your motherhood bumps up into the 40s, you can also anticipate perimenopause coming to visit you, along with the
Right.
if you had your last baby at say 40, 42, and menopause is right there going, hey, come on
Right.
in.
Right. Right. We're about to train wreck your life a little bit. Yeah. And I think if it was just part of the general conversations that are happening as women age up, right? I think it's why sometimes when, I'm in the communities I'm in with women and the ones of us who were going through or been through menopause are talking, the youngers are listening in, they're leaning in, they're saying, I love this conversation because they do want the information. Because, my mother never told me anything, and because I know she's gotten older and she's losing her memory, I finally was like, I need your medical history. And she was like, you don't need to know all that stuff. And I was like, no, you've like hidden things from me because you're embarrassed, but I want to prepare for what's coming up. Because if there's something I can do to prevent it, and one of the things is that thank God she doesn't listen to my podcast, her bladder, she had to have it pulled up,
Yeah,
right? Well,
throw like,
that's pelvic
mm,
health, right?
yep.
And so I'm like, there probably is something I can do to prevent it, but
Yes, you
she
can.
didn't tell me for years. And
Yeah.
then I was like, I got a pen and paper. I was like, spill the beans because I don't want to have to do these things if I can avoid them, And so I made her give me a list. She was pissed at me, but I was like, you can't keep this from me. It's my medical information.
Yeah, yeah. And I
Yeah.
mean, there's so much misunderstanding, and I'm very, very grateful that education and synthesizing complex concepts is my zone of genius, because there is a lot of complex information that doesn't need to be made complex, that needs to just be simplified, put into a system. It's really not that hard if you can just follow along and
Yeah.
have the women. And I'm not opposed to saying, hey, come sit next to me and watch me do this thing, because you'll pick it up and
Right.
you'll be just, it's not
Yeah.
that hard. What's hard is when you sit there and you scroll, and you've got five different people who are influencers of different things, who are trying to monetize different things, who are going to gather their followers. They're not concerned about your health
Right.
personally. They're concerned about health and maybe more patients, maybe more monetization, but they're not necessarily saying, hey, Tanya, Tell me about the thing you learned from your mom, because let's build you a system. Let's build
Right.
you something that is easy to follow so that every
Right.
decade you're not having to start from the bottom. And
Right.
let's keep you normalized and continued. Every now and then, we'll just check in and we'll make sure that you're doing okay on your framework. And that's all you have to do. It's really not that hard. And that's how it becomes your lifestyle.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. It's much needed for sure. Much
Yeah.
needed. And it sounds like you should write a book. Just gonna plant that seed and run.
You and about, I don't know how many other people.
I'm like, let me just throw that at you. Okay, bye. I just see that for you for some reason. But who am I? Well, I have enjoyed this conversation. It's
Me
a
too.
great conversation. I can't wait for more people to hear about it. And I'm going to put all of Marelda's information below in the show notes. And so definitely follow her on or not Instagram, LinkedIn for all of her information and contact her. All of her contact information will be there. But before we bounce off of here, if you have one or two tidbits of wisdom or advice to leave with listeners, I would love for you to share.
I will share what I would have liked to have heard in my 40s and maybe my early 50s is someone who could have guided me through menopause instead of me just believing like everybody else that it's the end of your period. And I think if we could create more communities of conversation, right? That's why I'm trying to have communities of conversation, not just communities that you can come in and sit in the background and say, let me see what everybody else is talking about, but actively saying, hey, you know what? I'm curious. I would like to learn about this, or that. Or just saying, wow, in this community, I always learn so and so. So learn things and be able to, be very, very discerning. I used to follow a million doctors because obviously I thought they knew more than I did. And from a clinical perspective, they do. But from a conversational perspective, from a break down the thing and talk to the person in front of you and address their fears, address their confusion, I'm just not seeing the needle moving there. So speak with people that help you move the needle forward, that clarify your confusion, not add to it, that actually have a true caring and nurturance when they're sharing information, because they're sharing lived experience, they're sharing not only their lived experience but other people's as well, because then there's sort of like it's like being in the library, right? There's many different kinds of
Yeah.
books. So you come in, you have different exposures and different collection of information. And I would say that it is never, ever too early to have conversations and to be open about it, to be open about the fact that you don't know everything. Be a beginner because you are a beginner in menopause.
I love that. I love that you're creating a community. I think community right now is so important in our world, in our culture, because we're more connected than ever. We always, people always talk about this. We're more connected than ever, but we're also so disconnected. And so the communities are where I just sort of like to live, in these communities where you feel seen and heard and understood. And I think in the world of menopause, we definitely need more of that. More of that. Yeah.
Yes, we
So
do.
thank you for what you do. And thank you
Thank you.
for coming on and talking to us about it today.
Thank you for the opportunity. This was really great.
Good. I'm so glad. Well, we're going to sign off now. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Tanya.